Welcome, everyone. So, we normally on these community calls do an educational topic each week, but we have had a lot of fun and a lot of interest from you guys and um, I guess comments saying how much you've appreciated when we have been doing these more just kind of intuitive personal calls where we're talking about different things in our life or different things that motivate us or where we're at with our goals. And so that was unexpected, but really fun for us to be able to share different processes and also a little bit more about our lives. So we're going to continue that this week. And last week we talked about really just where Casey and Henrietta were with their current life goals, being more intuitive in maintenance or a surplus, and just what their daily habits look like, what life looks like for them. And that was a really great call because I think that's where most of us are, or should be the majority of the time, right? Is finding that perfect equilibrium of what works for you and what can be intuitive. So your nutrition and fitness support your life. They don't control your life, right? But there are times in our lives when we have specific goals we want to hit, whether that comes to physique or performance-based goals. And that's really fun too. And I think when you spend that time in maintenance, then you can have a lot of drive and be able to give that focus if you're not doing it all the time, right? So this week's call, we're really excited about. We're going to be interviewing Autumn, Coach Autumn, who those of you that know her know that she's incredible. She probably has the most coaching experience of all of us on our team. She's competed as an athlete her whole life, essentially, been to the CrossFit Games multiple times, and is a mom of 3, also has a gym that she runs with her husband, focusing on addiction. And she also is an esthetician. So I go to her for all of my facial stuff too. I don't know how she does it all, but she seems to. So on top of that, she's training for, is it 40 miles?
46.
46 miles. And what's the most that you've done before? She's competed in CrossFit before, so she's not like a distance runner normally, but
right. So before CrossFit, I did probably 2. I think I started another one and I pulled out because my Achilles on mile 19. So I did a full marathon twice, but it was probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's been a long time.
Yeah. And so running 46 miles. So she's been training for that since when?
January.
Okay. So since January, and her race is
in 4 weeks from Saturday.
Okay. And then you have your first race, training race this weekend, right?
So I'm running 16 miles. It's in kilometers, but it's 16 miles. It's just local. It's in Ogden. So it's a really gnarly elevation change. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I really wanted to do that to test. Obviously I'm watching my pace while I train, but I wanted to test nutrition and I wanted to test speed and I wanted to get mostly just to get the nerves out, I think. So I will be racing Saturday. Yep. But it's only 16 miles.
Only 16. And I also want to note that the 46 miles she's running is it Snow Canyon?
Bryce Canyon.
So it's in Southern Utah. And so it's not just I don't know, I've run one marathon and it was essentially downhill the whole way. So it's not that. It's 46 miles of some of it will probably be a little bit of hiking, right? And you'll be running. And how long are you kind of anticipating that you'll be running that, time-wise?
So I will be happy finishing it around 8 hours.
Yeah.
If I feel good, and the girl, and this is just how my brain works. The girl that finished it last year was 7:37. And in my mind, I'm oh, I'm going to beat that time, but I don't know because I've never done this before. This is something I'm entering in that's completely new. So it'll be interesting. I will be happy with 8 hours.
I'm so excited.
And that depends on weather conditions too. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So the weather
could be snowing. You never know.
So it can be snowing at the top. It'll be about 30 degrees at the top. And in the base in Stockton Bryce Canyon, it'll spike up to 70 to 80. And then it'll narrow out about 60 to 50 at the finish line. So it's extreme, the weather conditions. So that plays a toll in it too.
Yeah. And
But how do you dress for that then?
Yeah, that's what I was
You
gonna
know,
say.
So the thing that's really good when you do distance running like that is you have aid stations. So I can have somebody, they will
What's
take a
that?
bag to like, so say mile 6 is my first check-in and I'm hot or I'm cold. I take off what I have on, I put it in my bag and they transfer it back to the finish line. And then I can have a bag there that I get stuff out of. So
Good.
like the support system of the race, anytime you do like an ultra, because it's technically an ultra marathon, but I'm only doing the half for it. So they have like really good support there, and my husband's available too. So there's 2 places that he can hike and get me what I need. And he's like super excited about it. He thinks it's like the coolest job ever. He's like got his backpack ready. And he's just like, we have a walkie-talkie system. Like he's so excited about it. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. They say to dress warm.
Yeah.
It is really cold, which sounds weird because you're at the end of May, you know, in Bryce Canyon, but I guess it gets pretty hot, like, so you'll be stripping, you know. Yeah. It's a good
Wow. So let's talk through, we're going to talk through nutrition for you because you're kind of a little bit different too on that, but let's talk through quickly your training schedule, what that has been like, because if you guys don't know, Autumn was CrossFitting before. So she's used to doing a lot of Metcons, a lot of lifting, and somehow fits that all in with everything she does. And so she's had to make some changes to do this race and get the mileage in that have been a little bit hard. So talk us through that.
Okay. So I decided to start training in January. And really when I technically started training, I thought, I know how to do this. I can do it on my own. You know, I can overlap my training and I can put some running in there. And it's a really good thing that I did not do that, because I would have completely sucked and I would have completely overtrained, because I think that's just something that we naturally do. So I have a coach who's amazing. And he basically, when we were on our call, he was just laughing at me. He's like, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too, because I'm like, oh, I can still do CrossFit.
Do the daily WOD, hit
I
the
can
5 days of lifting.
that 4 days a week. And he's just looking at me like, no, you're running a 50-mile race. Like your body's going to break down. It was pretty funny. So I'm like, okay. So I 100% trusted the process. I dove in, no holding back. I have not gone off at all, one teeny tiny bit. And I coach classes at my gym, and I've been getting really antsy. I'm like, oh, this workout looks really fun to do. But I've really kind of just stuck my guns, and I've been lifting 4 days a week. It's a progressive overload. I've built into I've actually gone heavier than I thought I would go, but it's very simple. It's 4 or 5 movements. Takes me 45 to 50 minutes per session. I'm in the gym 4 to 5 times a week. I'm pushing, I'm pulling. I'm doing a lot of posterior chain work. I'm really strengthening my core. I'm strengthening my back, my hamstrings, and my butt, obviously. I started off with 1 run a week, which is kind of crazy, but I was doing 3 days a week as zone 2 training. So I was on an elliptical, and I started off at 20 minutes and I was very pissy about it. I would get on and just be like on this elliptical that I'm so not familiar with, watching my heart rate. And I mean, it was always a good workout and it feels good to move, but it took me a long time mentally to be like, I feel like I had to do something else. I got off the elliptical and I'm like, okay, well now what's my workout, you know? But I was slowly progressed into 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour on the elliptical. He slowly started taking away the elliptical, throwing in the runs. So now I do like a power run, a heel run, which are the worst. I do interval training every week, and then I do a steady state run, which is my longer distance run. So I typically am in the gym 4 days, no matter what. And I'm typically running 3 to 4 days a week. And that ranges about 30 miles per week. And then my peak was 51 miles per week. And that was 2 weeks ago. And now I'm going into deload.
Yeah. So now over the next 4 weeks, what will that look like?
So the next 4 weeks, I'm continuing to deload. I do a lot of really moderate heart rate, more like 6 to 10 range mileage for for 2 days in the week. And then I'll still stick to about a 90-minute to a 2-hour run. But technically I only have 3 weeks of running left, because
Mhm.
that whole week of my race, I think I'll do a shakeout probably Monday and Tuesday. And then the rest of the time, kind of similar to what I did this week. So yesterday was my last run and I'm racing on Saturday.
Mhm.
But it's nothing extreme. I mean, my heart rate stays down to about, my average heart rate's about 140 when I'm running, if I'm not doing intervals or hills, which is a good place for me to be.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it there. And my volume in the gym is super, super low, like 3 sets of, whatever, I'm doing for about 3 to 4 exercises. So it's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we'll have to do a follow-up call with you in like 6 weeks,
Yeah.
once you've recovered, to
Mhm.
see how it went, how you're feeling, all of that. Because there's so many things you can't predict in a 46-mile race in different weather conditions, with different like elevation gains and different terrain. And so
Right.
it'll be really cool. Just the fact that you're even doing it and she's doing it on her own, not like signing up with a big group of friends or anything, is so cool. So excited about that. And then as far as nutrition goes, what's been different for you? I know kind of leading up to this race, you wanted to be as light as possible because that's going to be a lot easier to move, but also as strong as possible. So what has that looked like for you in regards to nutrition?
So yeah, I really wanted to, I know this sounds really stupid, but I really wanted to look the part. You know what I mean? If I was going to go out there and run an ultra, I didn't want to look like somebody that doesn't run ultras. I don't know. I wanted to be not, you know what I mean? I wanted to fit in and look the part. So I really wanted to cut some mass. I don't really want to say weight. I wasn't concerned about weight, but I wanted all around mass because I hold a lot of muscle on my body just from years of training. So
yeah, and that's great, but you have to eat muscle's great. It's going to help strengthen your running, but you have to carry it still. So it doesn't, it's not always helpful. There's a reason why ultra runners look the way they do.
Yep.
So
There's a difference between running almost 50 miles at 158 versus 148, just like a big difference. So
yeah.
I really wanted to cut down to 148. I'm almost there. I kind of go up and down these last couple of pounds, but I have about 3 pounds left, which I think if I was just to run right now, I would be totally fine with it. But I just did what really we all do. I kind of reversed. I came out of competing in the games with 7 years of macro counting. And I left the games, had a baby. I took a couple of years off and I really didn't start getting super diligent with it until I threw myself this goal and I knew I had something to push for. So then I started being like, okay, so I started really getting consistent with my tracking. So I reversed, I built up to, my maintenance cows. I hung out there for 3 weeks and then we vamped it up to start cutting some weight. There was a time that we went too low in calories just because my body thrives better with higher calories. And I could feel it. So we went back up and now
you're pushing yourself in your training. So it's different than, a lot of times when we're doing a cut, training can kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. Like you have to go through the motions, you're still getting in your sessions, but the priority is fat loss and your workouts are going to suffer a little bit. Where in your case, like your workouts can't suffer. Like you have to be able to give everything to your workout. So it's a really fine balance of calories, to where you're eliciting that fat loss response, but you're able to recover and train hard.
Right.
Can you also talk about, I know that previously you tend to like the fat, you like your fats a little bit more, but whereas ultra, you're going to have tons and tons of carbs. Can you tell us how that transition was? Did you slowly work your way up? Like, how did that work for you mentally?
Yeah, it was, I've always kind of been a little bit better, higher, not better, but I've always just eaten.
Your preference.
Yeah, just a little higher fat, not high fat, but I would say more moderate of both. And I really had to transition into way lower fat, way higher carbs. And it did take a couple weeks mentally. I really had to take a step back and look at the food choices I was making. And, you gear yourself up to a certain carbohydrate for what you feel like you should be eating. And I've really had to be like, oh, I can eat this pancake in the morning. I can eat this, whatever it is that has this higher carbohydrate amount and be completely fine, because I've got to get my carbohydrates up.
Yeah.
Changing my foods for lower fat has been a little trickier than I thought. I mean, I've had to go back and forth with like coffee creamers, egg whites. I mean, I had to really take a step back and look at my foods over the last 2 weeks. And literally I had a piece of paper writing down, okay, I've got to shift this. I've got to take this up. And it took doing it, just applying it, just executing it every day. And then now it's like, oh my gosh, how did I ever eat 70 grams of fat? Not that 70 grams of fat is high, but when
you have to get in a certain amount of carbs and be in a deficit.
For this
so
goal, for this current goal that you have for yourself. It will be high.
And it was hard. Like it was something that I was like, oh, I love my nut butter and my protein shake. But I had a goal and I had to just work with it and stick to it. And
have you noticed a difference in since you've lowered your fats and brought carbs up? What have you felt like?
Yes,
I felt
huge
difference in your training.
With energy. I actually noticed that I'm holding on a lot more muscle, which is fine with that higher carbohydrate and higher protein. I just feel like my food is more efficient in digestion as well. Like I don't have a lot of stomach issues. I just never get super bloated. It's just kind of, it's been great. I actually don't know if I will adjust back to, higher fat, but it did take some time mentally for me to, I would say it took like 2 or 3 weeks for me to feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now I got this, but it took me doing it every single day too. I wasn't going to be like, oh, Sunday, I'm going to,
can't really wing it if you're used to the fat intake you're at before. You have to like kind of have a plan and think about it ahead of time.
Right. And like these high carb bars, like the Built bars that I now consume, I'm like, this is awesome. It's like 50 grams of carbs, and it's just stuff that you've taught yourself, like, oh, I really can't
need that.
Yeah. So that's been interesting to do too.
Yeah, that's I think for people that are listening, like that's a really good opportunity to know that sometimes things might feel like, oh, that's not the solution for me. It might feel, just depending on whatever it is that you hear. But when you try something and give it a sec to really just like give it 3 weeks and then decide, and I think there's a reason usually why your coach wants you to do something. In your case, or like in our case with clients, trying something different. And if you aren't sure, like the benefit, ask questions too, but also be willing to try, because you might think your body's going to respond one way, or you think you're going to feel one way about something. And then when you try it, you realize, oh, that's actually not how I feel, or not how my body responds. It just takes a minute to see the benefits. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm also curious to know, like with because you were eating, moderate fats before, and now you're eating more carbs, with more carbs comes more fiber. How did that work as far as your training goes? Because with obviously ultra, you're not going to want to have too much fiber, but you also don't want to have too little. So how did that work as far as, do you have to time it around your runs where like certain meals are certain amounts? How does that work?
Yeah. And I've never really noticed, because I always get my runs in early in the morning. Not super early, like my long runs are on Saturday. So I place my veggies more in the afternoon. So I'll hit a heavier veggie meal lunch. And I usually have veggies between the lunch and dinner hour, and then dinner, I vamp up my veggies. So it never became a problem that I was, that I noticed, because I was always training with those quick burning carbohydrates in the morning. But I definitely think it would. Like, I think, I'm not going to eat my salad with my cucumbers and my celery and put on my running shoes and go run a 10K, but I always structured, like the rice cereal, the wheat cereal, I always structured really quick and clean carbohydrates. I was always afraid, like I'm not eating donuts, I feel like it's the fat that disrupts my stomach more. And I think it has a lot to do with the insulin in your body, pulling in the glucose and kicking it out. But I feel like it's more the fat, but I've always stuck my fiber a little bit away from my training window, just because I kind of knew how to do that,
Yeah. Well, first of all, any other questions? Does anyone have questions? Put them in the chat box. And then
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about recovery? What are you doing for recovery while you're training? Do you have complete rest days? Are you doing any kind of, muscle recovery stuff? What are you doing for all that?
So I wasn't at first. Well, I took a couple of recovery days, but I'm really bad at mobility, stretching, foam rolling. I literally, you guys, I'm not even kidding you. I will finish a race, or not a race, a long run, come home, grab my keys, grab my meal that I'd prepped the night before, throw my kids in the car. I'm at 2 football games, 2 baseball games, and I just walk around now. I can't even sit down because my legs get so tired. I was really bad at that. And it really showed. My posterior chain was shot. My hamstrings were shot. My hip flexors were shot. Everything, the bottom of my feet, you guys know how I had issues with the plantar fasciitis. And now guess what? 10 to 15 minutes a day, I'm foam rolling. If I run at all, I have a lacrosse ball in my shower. And while I'm showering, I'm rolling out my feet and I'm switching there. Every time I coach now, I'm stretching, and I do have a full rest day that I don't lift and I don't train in the gym. So I do have that full rest day. And in regards with nutrition, my nutrition stays pretty consistent throughout the week. I just really have to focus my carbohydrates around when I'm running, because if I don't, one, I get really hungry the rest of the day, especially with me with a lower caloric intake. And two, I really notice I don't recover as well. So I got to make sure I'm getting 60 grams of carbs before, 30 right after, and then 60 grams of carbohydrates at least within an hour and a half of my run. So, and that's really helped. And I'm older, like I'm 41. So my body doesn't.
You're not older.
Well, I'm older than you. So, my body doesn't respond the way it did when I'm 30.
You're in 20s.
Yeah. Just training with food and training in general, I've really had to learn, like, okay, I have to take care of myself. So that's just a whole other time frame that you have to put into it, but you have to do it if you're going to push yourself to that extreme, I feel like, and that's something I've learned this last 6 months for sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your water intake too, as well?
As water and electrolyte.
Time that.
So water definitely is not enough. And I'll tell you right now, you'll feel way more hydrated if you're consuming electrolytes, not only in the morning, but throughout the day. So I will have 2 packets of the LMNT electrolytes. They're my fave. Typically, I will make myself have an electrolyte. It depends on the run. So there are electrolytes in my pack during my run. I have to get 800 milliliters of fluid, and that needs to include sodium and potassium. And I can't remember the exact numbers. So I have a specific brand that I run with. If I don't have that, then I have an electrolyte before I hit the treadmill or before I go outside. Anything under 90 minutes, I'll have an electrolyte before I go. But that has definitely been something. If I get Charlie horses in the bottom of my feet, I notice, okay, I've got to have something, and I'll instantly get an electrolyte, and it helps a ton with that. Or I'll put just like a teaspoon of salt in my water. You can't even taste it. With every one of these, I'll put a teaspoon in, and that keeps me way more hydrated than just regular water.
I feel that way, and I'm not doing an ultra.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I'll keep doing, because I feel my skin feels better. Like I just feel
energized.
Better all around.
Yeah. Well, we're excited for you. It's going to be so much fun to get to watch you. You're going to do a little bit of filming, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes, I promised my husband. He's all into it too. So I would really like to keep a video blog.
While you're running.
I get kind of competitive. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not going to take the time to take the phone. However, this is a different type of race. So I promised him I would. If I start hurting and I had to go into the mental pain cave and focus, then I probably won't, but I'll get some at the start and probably more towards the middle. And then I'll get some for sure at the finish line, but I'll try to keep everybody posted.
Even like some voice memos would be
Yeah.
kind of cool. Cause then you could at least like talk through some of your thoughts that you're having. You might have, videos a little bit harder to do when you're like running, but even some voice memos would be cool to just listen back on and remember how you're feeling. Cause you're going to have a lot of feelings over the 8 hours.
A lot of thoughts going on in my head.
Do you have a playlist planned?
So I have a playlist plan. I am not allowing myself to put my headphones on until I'm halfway through the race.
Oh, I like that.
A lot of reasons. One, just to connect with my body.
Yeah.
See how I'm feeling. Watch my pace, focus on that. But I do like music and I do have a playlist. I've been building it for months and I'm hoping just to like my watch will die, my phone will die, my headphones will die. You can't have that stuff on for 8 hours, but I'm hoping like the last 10 miles, I'll be in a mindset where I can put it on. And that I feel like that will help me if I feel good, pick my pace up to finish at a faster time. But I do have a playlist.
You have to share your playlist with everyone after.
Yeah, I will, but I'm old, so I have older music on there.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing. And if you guys have any questions for Autumn, share them to the group chat, and we'll just all be cheering her on. And next week, I think we're going to talk through kind of what I'm doing, and then we'll probably go through from there, Julie or Sam, if they want to share. And so if you guys have questions for any of us, then post them in the group chat. And thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.